Hash the receptionist who melted the coldest real estate mogul. If you love stories of unexpected love with surprising twists, subscribe and join me every week. It was 11:30 at night when Sophia closed her accounting book with trembling hands. She had just received the message that would change everything. Building marked for demolition, eviction in 30 days, Mendoza. What she didn't know was that the man who had signed that order had been watching her for months through security cameras, never imagining that she was the only one capable of melting the ice he had kept in his chest for 15 years. Hi, before we continue with this story, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? I love imagining what country or city is keeping me company today. Now let's get back to this story that's about to open many wounds. And maybe some hearts. Sofia Herrera had been working as a receptionist at the Santander building for 3 years, an old office building in the city center that had seen better days. Every morning at 8 sharp, she would sit behind the cracked marble counter, greet the tenants with her warm smile as they hurried up to their offices, and in the afternoons she would rush to pick up her 5-year-old son, Mateo, from kindergarten. The nights were hers, or rather, they belonged to numbers, equations, accounting books that she studied under the yellowish light of her small apartment on the 3rd floor of the same building where she worked. Sophia had turned her life into a race against time, work during the day, study at night, be a mother 24 hours a day, all to give Mateo what she never had, stability. But that March night, while rain pounded against her window, the future she had built brick by brick crumbled with a simple text message. The next day, Sophia arrived at work earlier than ever. She needed to understand what exactly that message meant. The Santander building wasn't just her workplace, it was her home. On the 3rd floor lived she and Mateo. On the 2nd, Mrs. Carmen, a 70-year-old widow who tended plants in every available corner. On the 4th was the small practice of Dr. Ramirez, who treated neighborhood residents for free. On the 5th, the accounting office where Marta worked, a divorced woman with 3 children who had nowhere else to go. It wasn't just a building, it was a small community that had grown around necessity and stayed together through solidarity. Sophia was reviewing the rental contract when she heard the sound of expensive shoes against the marble floor. She looked up and found herself face to face with a man who looked like he had stepped off the cover of a business magazine. Impeccable black suit, dark hair perfectly slicked back, firm jaw and gray eyes that seemed capable of piercing any defense. Alexander Mendoza was 35 years old and had built a real estate empire by demolishing the past to build the future. He didn't care about stories, only numbers. He didn't see families in the buildings he bought. He saw square footage and profit potential. His company, Mendoza Properties, was known throughout the city for its luxury developments and its ability to transform entire neighborhoods regardless of who stood in the way. "Good morning. I need to speak with the building administrator," he said with a deep voice that echoed in the empty lobby. Sophia felt her heart racing. She knew exactly who this man was. She had Googled his name the night before until 3 in the morning. "Mr. Gonzalez doesn't arrive until 10. How can I help you?" Alexander looked at her for the first time, really looked at her, and something changed expression. For months he had watched this woman through the security cameras he had installed when he bought the building. He had seen her arrive early, leave late, study at her desk during breaks, carry a small child in the afternoon. But seeing her face to face, seeing the determination in her dark eyes, the way she kept her back straight despite the worrying that could be read on her face, was completely different. "You're Sofia Herrera, right?" She felt a chill. How did he know her name? "Yes, and you're Alexander Mendoza, the man who's going to throw us all out on the street." There was no accusation in her voice, only a deep sadness that completely disarmed him. Alexander had expected screaming, complaints, maybe. He had dealt with that thousands of times, but that pained resignation caught him off guard. "It's just business, Miss Herrera. Nothing personal." Sophia slowly stood up from her chair. She was shorter than him, but in that moment she seemed to grow until she was looking him in the eyes. "Nothing personal, Mr. Mendoza. You're going to demolish the only home my son has ever known. You're going to leave Mrs. Carmen homeless, and she has no family or place to go. You're going to close Dr. Ramirez's practice, the only doctor who treats people for free in this neighborhood. How can you say it's not personal?" Alexander had perfected the art of indifference. For years he had built walls around his heart, had learned that compassion was a luxury he couldn't afford in business. But something in this woman's voice, in the way she defended her small community, made a crack appear in those walls. "The building isn't profitable. It needs millions in repairs that no one is willing to pay for. It's better to demolish and build something new." For whom? For people like you who can afford luxury apartments. And what happens to people like us? Alexander approached the counter, and Sophia could smell his expensive cologne, see the small wrinkles around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and difficult decisions. Look, Miss Herrera, I didn't invent the rules of the game. I just play them better than others. This building is going to be demolished in 30 days. You can find another place or I can help you with the move. Those are the options. Sophia felt tears threatening to appear, but she held them back. She wasn't going to give this man the satisfaction of seeing her break. What if I propose a third option, which is, give me 60 days. Let me show you that this building can be profitable, that this community is worth saving. Alexander almost smiled. Almost. You, a receptionist studying accounting, is going to save a building that's been in the red for years. Sophia walked to the filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder she had prepared during the night. I studied all the building's expenses for the last 5 years. I analyzed tenant flow, maintenance costs, necessary repairs. With an investment of 100,000 pesos and some changes in administration, this building can generate 20% more income in 6 months. Alexander took the folder, surprised by how detailed the analysis was. The numbers were correct, the projections realistic. This woman had done in one night what would have taken his team a week. And why would I risk my time and money on? Because, Sophia replied, looking him straight in the eyes, somewhere inside you there's still something human left. And because I believe you need to save this place as much as we need you to save it. Those words pierced him like a bullet. How could this woman read things in him that he didn't even know were there? 60 days, Miss Herrera. But if you don't achieve what you promise, there won't be any more extension. Alexander turned to leave, but stopped at the door. One more thing. I want weekly progress reports, and I want them from you personally. During the following weeks, Sophia became a force of nature. She organized the tenants, negotiated with suppliers, painted walls, fixed leaks, and transformed the old lobby into a welcoming space. Mrs. Carmen installed a small garden at the entrance that she filled with flowers. Dr. Ramirez donated some extra hours to treat patients in the building. Marta helped with numbers and organization. But the real changes happened in the weekly reports. Every Thursday, Alexander arrived punctually at 6 in the evening. At first, the meetings lasted 15 minutes. Sophia would show him the progress. He would review the numbers, nod with professional coldness, and leave. But gradually, the meetings extended. Alexander began asking questions that went beyond the numbers. How had she convinced Mrs. Carmen to plant flowers in the lobby? Why had Dr. Ramirez agreed to work for free 2 extra hours per week? How did she manage to get everyone to collaborate when he had never been able to generate that loyalty, even paying high salary? One April afternoon, after the 4th report, Alexander stayed longer than usual. Can I ask you something personal, Miss Herrera? Sophia was organizing some papers and looked up. In recent weeks, she had learned to read this man's expressions. There were days when he arrived tense, with his jaw clenched and his gaze cold. Other days, like today, he seemed more human. Go ahead. Why do you do all this? You could move somewhere else, get another job. Why fight so hard for something that might not be worth saving? Sophia left the papers and sat across from him. It was the first time the conversation had become truly personal. Have you ever had a place that felt like your real home? Mr. Mendoza, Alexander took time to answer. His mind inevitably traveled to his childhood, to a house he had lost long ago. A long time ago, yes. I grew up moving constant. My mother and I never had a place of our own. We were always just passing. When I arrived here with Mateo, when Mrs. Carmen helped me carry my few things up to the 3rd floor, when Dr. Ramirez checked my son for free when he had a fever the first week. It was the first time in my life I felt like I belonged somewhere. This building is ugly, old, imperfect, but it's our home. And Mateo's father. The question came out before he could stop it. Sophia tensed slightly. He left us when Mateo was 6 months old. He decided that being a father was too complicated for him. Alexander felt a pang of something he couldn't identify. Anger, protection, I'm sorry, don't apologize. His leaving gave me the opportunity to give my son something I never had, stability. And it brought me here, to this little family we've built. Alexander watched her study the papers under the warm light of the desk lamp. There was something about this woman's determination, her ability to create community where others only saw problem, that awakened emotions in him that he had buried years ago. Can I meet Mateo? The question surprised them both. Sophia looked up, searching Alexander's gray eyes for some clue about his intention. Why? Because, he answered with the honesty that bewildered him, I think I want to better understand what you're defending. That night, for the first time in 3 years, Sophia invited someone to her small apartment on the third floor. Matteo was having dinner when he heard the door. "Mommy, who is it?" "It's Mr. Alexander, sweetheart. He's the owner of the building." Matteo, the 5-year-old boy with the same dark eyes as his mother and a smile that could light up her, approached without shyness. "Are you the man who's going to fix the elevator?" Alexander crouched down to be at the child's level. When was the last time he had talked to a 5-year-old? "Does it bother you that the elevator doesn't work?" "A little bit, because Mrs. Carmen's legs hurt when she climbs the stairs. But Mommy says they're going to fix it soon." Alexander looked at Sophia, who was making tea in the small kitchenette. The apartment was tiny but cozy. There were accounting books stacked on a table, Matteo's drawings stuck to the refrigerator, plants that were surely gifts from Mrs. Carmen. "Do you like living here, Matteo?" "Yes, Mrs. Carmen teaches me flower names, and Dr. Ramirez let me use his stethoscope. And from my window I can see the park where Mommy takes me on Sundays." Alexander felt something strange in his chest. When was the last time he had seen the world through a child's eyes? When had he stopped noticing flowers, parks, the little things that made a place feel like home? After dinner, when Matteo fell asleep on the couch watching a movie, Alexander and Sophia went out to the small balcony that overlooks the inner courtyard. From there they could see the lit windows of other apartments, glimpse pieces of life. Mrs. Carmen watering her plants, Dr. Ramirez reading in his office, Marta helping her children with homework. "It's beautiful," Alexander murmured. "What is this community you've built? I've spent years building buildings, but I've never seen anything like this." Sophia looked at profile. The moonlight softened his hard features, and for the first time she could imagine what he had been like before becoming the most feared real estate mogul in the city. "Can I ask you something personal, Mr. Mendoza?" "Alexander." "Alexander, I think after meeting your son and seeing we can use first names." Sophia felt something move inside her. This man, who had arrived a month ago as a destructive force, was showing a vulnerability she hadn't expected. "Why did you dedicate yourself to demolishing places instead of building these like this?" Alexander remained silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded different, younger, more hurt. "Because when I was 10 years old, I lost the only home I had ever known. And I decided it was easier to destroy than to risk losing something I loved again." Sophia felt the impulse to touch him, to console him, but she held back. There was something in Alexander's posture that indicated the story wasn't over. "My father was an alcoholic. My mother died when I was 8, and he started drinking more and more. We had a beautiful house in the Palermo neighborhood, a house that had belonged to my mother's family for generations. When I was 10, he sold it to pay his gambling debts. One day I came home from school and there was a sold sign on the door. 'Where did you go to live?' 'To a miserable apartment where I spent the rest of my childhood. My father died when I was 18. By then I had already decided that I would never be vulnerable again, that I would never again depend on places or people that could disappear." "And your mother's house?" Alexander smiled bitterly. "I bought it back 5 years ago. I demolished it and built an office building." Sophia felt her heart shrink. "Alexander... I know what you're going to say. That I destroyed my own past, that I became what I hated as a child. But it was the only way to keep moving forward." "Moving forward toward what?" "Toward nowhere," he admitted. "Just keep moving so I wouldn't feel the emptiness." That night, after Alexander, Sophia stayed awake thinking about that 10-year-old boy who had lost his. She understood now the coldness, the need for control, the fear disguised as pragmatism. Alexander wasn't a destroyer of homes. He was a man terrified of having a home. The next morning, Sophia made a decision that would change everything. Instead of waiting for the weekly report, she went to the Mendoza Properties office. The glass and steel building was nothing like the warm chaos of the Santander building. Everything was cold, modern, impersonal. The secretary looked at her with disdain when she asked to see Alexander. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but he'll see me." Indeed, when Alexander learned that Sophia was in his office, he canceled his 10 o'clock meeting. He found her standing in front of the panoramic window overlooking the city, but she wasn't admiring the view. She was studying it. "Is everything okay? Did something happen at the building?" "No. I came to invite you to lunch." "To lunch?" Alexander couldn't remember the last time someone had invited him to lunch without a business agenda behind it. "There's a small restaurant near the building. The food is simple, but the owner is a lady who cooks as if it were for her family. I thought, maybe you'd like to know the neighborhood from another perspective." An hour later, Alexander found himself sitting at a formica table in a restaurant he would never have set foot in under normal circumstances. The owner, Mrs. Rosa, treated Sophia like a daughter and welcomed him with the warmth reserved for family friends. "So you're the famous Mr. Mendoza. Sophia told us you're helping to fix the building." Alexander looked at Sophia, surprised. She had presented the situation as if he were the hero, not the villain. "It's Sophia who's doing all the work. That girl is a treasure. When she arrived in the neighborhood 3 years ago, she looked like a scared little bird. But look at her now, fighting for her community like a lioness." During lunch, Mrs. Rosa told them about the neighborhood, about the merchants who had closed their businesses when the big chains arrived, about the families who had to move when rents went up. Alexander listened in silence, beginning to understand the real impact of it. "You know what I like most about the Santander building?" Mrs. Rosa asked him while serving them homemade dessert. "It's like a small town in the middle of the city. People know each other, take care of each other. You don't see that much anymore." After lunch, Sophia and Alexander walked slowly back to the neighborhood looked different on foot, more human. Alexander noticed things he had never seen from his car with tinted windows, the store where an elderly man played chess with customers, the used bookstore that also served coffee, the small park where children played after school. "I had never walked through this neighborhood," he confessed. "Really? And how do you make decisions about places you don't know?" "Based on numbers, market studies, projection. Not on ... On what? On stories, on people, on what a place really means." When they reached the building, they encountered a small crisis. A pipe had burst in the basement and water was flooding the common area. The tenants were trying to save what they could, but they clearly needed professional help. Without thinking twice, Alexander took off his jacket and rolled up his "Where's the main shutoff valve?" For the next 2 hours, Alexander worked side by side with the tenants to control the flood. He called his maintenance team, negotiated emergency prices with suppliers, coordinated repairs. But more importantly, he literally got his hands dirty, carrying buckets, moving furniture, comforting Mrs. Carmen when she thought she had lost her plants. When they finally managed to control the situation, Alexander was soaked, dirty and exhausted. But he also felt more alive than he had felt in years. Sophia watched him from the entrance, with an expression on her face that he couldn't interpret. "What? Nothing. It's just that I had never seen you really smile." Alexander realized she was right. He was smiling, and it felt natural, not forced like the smiles he put on in business meetings. That night, Alexander didn't return to his penthouse in Puerto Madero. He stayed at the Santander building, helping with the last repairs. When they finished, it was almost 11 at night. "Do you want to have dinner?" Sophia asked. "I don't have much, but I can make pasta." Half an hour later, Alexander found himself sitting in Sophia's small kitchen, watching her cook with efficient and loving movement. Mateo had eaten early and was asleep in his room, but his presence was felt in every corner of the home. His drawings, his organized toys, his storybook. "Do you know how to cook?" Sophia asked him while stirring the sauce. "I used to. Before." "Before what?" "Before I decided it was easier to order food and eat at my desk." "When was the last time you cooked for someone?" Alexander had to think. The answer surprised him. "Never. I never cooked for another person." Sophia looked at him with a mixture of understanding and sadness. "It must be very lonely to live like that. It's simpler or safer." The question hung in the air while they ate. Alexander tasted the homemade food, observed Mateo's photos on the refrigerator, listened to the sounds of the building settling into the night. It was all so different from his world of glass and steel, but it felt more real than anything he had experienced in years. After dinner, they stayed talking until late. Sophia told him about her studies, about her dreams of having her own accounting consultancy, about how difficult it had been to raise Mateo alone, but how rewarding it was to see him grow. Alexander, gradually, began to open up about his past, about the loneliness of his success, about how empty his life had become. "Did you never want to start a family?" Sophia asked. Alexander took time to answer. "I had a relationship some years ago. We lived together, talked about getting married. But when she started talking about children, about buying a house together, about building something permanent ... I got scared. I pushed her away till she left." "Did you love her?" "I think so, but I was more afraid of losing her than I wanted to be with her." "And don't you regret it, every day?" It was the most honest confession he had made in years. At 2 in the morning, Alexander finally got up to leave. "Thank you for dinner, and for ... this." "For what?" "For reminding me what it feels like to be human." Sophia walked him to the door. In the poorly lit hallway of the 3rd floor, they looked at each other in silence. There was something charging in the air between them, a tension that had been growing for weeks. Alexander raised a hand and, very gently, moved a strand of hair from Sophia's. She didn't pull away, Sophia. She moved a step closer, and he could smell her soft perfume, see the small freckles she had on her nose, her slightly parted lips. They kissed slowly, softly, as if both were afraid of breaking something fragile. For Alexander, it was like waking up after years of sleeping. For Sophia, it was like coming home after a long journey. When they separated, both were trembling slightly. "This changes everything," Alexander murmured. "I know. Are you sure?" Sophia looked into his eyes and saw the 10-year-old boy who had lost his house, the man who had spent years building walls to protect his heart. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The following days were a mixture of intense work and mutual discovery. Alexander began spending more time at the Santander building, officially supervising the renovation, but actually learning to be part of the bee that Sophia had. He helped Mrs. Carmen install an irrigation system for her plants. He donated modern medical equipment for Dr. Ramirez's practice. He hired Marta as an accounting consultant for several of his projects. But more importantly, he began to see his properties with different eyes. One afternoon, while reviewing the latest progress reports, Sophia noticed that Alexander had brought additional blueprints. "What's that?" "The original project for this place. It was going to be a luxury apartment building." "Was going to be?" Alexander smiled. "I have a better idea. How would you feel about converting the Santander building into an affordable housing project? Completely renovate but keep all the current tenants, add more family units, create real community spaces." "Are you serious?" "I've never been more serious. But I need a partner, someone who understands communities as much as I understand construction." "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you much more than that." Alexander approached her and took her hands. "I'm offering you the opportunity to build something together. Not just building, but a future." Sophia felt her heart racing. Alexander. "I know it's very fast. I know we barely really know each other. But I also know that in these weeks with you I've discovered things about myself that I had forgotten. You've taught me that a home isn't a place you can buy or sell, but something you build with the people you love." Sophia felt tears appearing in her eyes. For 3 years she had fought alone, had built a life for her and Mateo with her own hands. The idea of having a partner, someone who understood her dreams and wanted to build something with her, was overwhelming. But before she could respond, they heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. It was Marta, and she looked distressed. "Sophia, sorry to interrupt, but I need to talk to you urgently." "What happened?" "Another letter arrived. It's not about demolition, it's different." Marta handed her an official envelope with the law firm's letterhead. Sophia opened it with trembling hands and as she read, the color disappeared from her face. "What does it say?" Alexander asked. Sophia looked up with an expression of total shock. "It says that ... It says that the Santander building was sold illegally 25 years ago. That the sale was never properly registered and that ... That the true legal owner is ... She couldn't finish the sentence. She handed the letter to Alexander, who read it quickly. His expression changed completely. "Alexander Mendoza Varga, is that you?" Alexander read the letter twice before completely understanding. "Varga was my mother's maiden name. This is the building my father sold when I was 10 years old." The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia felt the world spinning around her. "Are you telling me that the building where I live, where I work, where I've built my life, is yours? Has it been yours all along?" "No, Sophia, listen. Why were you watching me through the camera? Why did you know my name? Has this all been a game to you?" "No, Sophia, I didn't know." Marta felt uncomfortable with the tension and mumbled something about coming back later, but neither of them heard her leave. "How could you not know? You're the owner of the building. You have all the papers." Alexander ran his hands through his hair, trying to process the information. "When I bought this building a year ago, I did it through intermediary. The name that appeared on the papers was San Martin Investments LLC. I never investigated the previous history. I only knew it was an undervalued property in an area with potential. And the address, the neighborhood. Nothing seemed familiar." Alexander closed his eyes. "The truth was painful. I had blocked everything out. After they sold the house, I refused to come back to this neighborhood. For 25 years I avoided passing through these streets. When my employees brought me the purchase documentation, I only looked at the numbers." Sophia sat heavily in her chair. "Everything was beginning to fit together in a horrible way. That's why you stayed when I asked for 60 days. That's why you accepted to listen to my proposal. It wasn't because you believed in me or this community. It was because this place means something to you. It's not like that, Sophia. No." "Then explain to me why a man who never gives second chances gave me 60 days to prove something impossible." Alexander approached her. But Sophia stood up and moved away. At first, maybe yes. Maybe part of me stayed because this place awakened memories I had buried. But everything that happened after, everything I feel for you, for Mateo, for this community, that's real. How can I know that? How can I be sure I'm not just another piece in your process of healing your past? Because I love you. The words came out of him with a desperation that surprised them both. I love you, Sophia. I love your strength, your determination, the way you fight for the people you care about. I love how you look at me as if I could be better than I am. I love the life you've built here, and I want to be part of it. Not because this building legally belongs to me, but because you give meaning to every corner. Sophia felt tears running down her cheeks. Do you know what's most painful about all this? That for the first time in my life I had started to believe that someone really saw me. Not the single mother who needs help, not the employee who can be useful, but me. And now I discovered that maybe I was just part of your healing process. Alexander felt his heart breaking. Sophia, please, listen to me. No, I need time to think. I need to understand what's real and what's this. Sophia took her purse and headed toward the door. Where are you going? To pick up Mateo. We're going to stay with a friend tonight. Alexander followed her to the hallway. Don't run from this, Sophia. Don't run from us. She stopped on the stairs and turned around. U.S., how can I know if there's an us or if I'm just part of your story with this building? That night, Alexander stayed alone in the Santander building for the first time since he was a child. He walked through every floor, remembering. On the second floor, where Mrs. Carmen now lived, had been the doorkeeper's apartment who always gave him candy. On the fourth floor, where Dr. Ramirez's practice now was, had lived a family with 3 children who were his playmates. On the 5th floor he found something that left him breathless. In one of the back windows, you could still see the marks on the frame where he had carved his name when he was 9 years old, AM 1999. He stood there for hours, trying to understand how fate had brought him back to the place where it all began. Was it coincidence? Was it the universe giving him a second chance to do things right? 3 days later, Sophia still hadn't returned. Alexander had cancelled all his meetings and had installed himself in the building, personally coordinating the last repairs. But really he was waiting for her to come back so they could talk. Mrs. Carmen was the one who finally dared to confront him. Alexander, can I talk to you? Of course, Mrs. Carmen. What did you do to make Sophia? Alexander told her the whole story. Mrs. Carmen listened in silence, watering her plants while he spoke. Do you know what I think? She said finally. What? That you're here for something more than coincidence. My late husband always said that places keep memories, and that sometimes they call us back when we need to heal something. Do you think I should fight for her? I think you should ask yourself what's more important, being right or being happy. That afternoon, Alexander made a decision. He went to his office and drafted a document that would change everything. Then he called Sophia. Can we talk? I have something to show you. Sophia returned to the building that night, but she didn't go up to her apartment. She met Alexander in the lobby, keeping physical and emotional distance. What did you want to show me? Alexander handed her an envelope. Open it. Sophia read the document twice before understanding what she was seeing. Is this a property deed? In my name, Alexander nodded. The building is yours, Sophia. Legally, without conditions, without strings attached. What? I can't accept this. It's too much. You can and you will accept it, because this place belongs much more to you than to me. You're the one who has filled it with life, who has created a community, who has turned a building into a home. Why are you doing this? Alexander took a step closer, but respected the distance she had put between them. Because I want you to know that everything I feel for you is real. I want you to know that I don't need this building to love you, that I don't need to be your owner to want you in my life. Sophia felt the defenses she had built in recent days beginning to waver. Alexander. I also drafted. He handed her another document. What is it? A partnership contract. You would be the majority partner. I would be the investor. We could work together to develop affordable housing projects throughout the city, but only if you want. And only after you know, without any doubt, that I love you for who you are, not for what you represent. Sophia read the contract, seeing how he had structured everything so she would have total control. And if I tell you no, what if I decide I can't trust you? Then I'll respect your decision. The building is still yours, the contract is still an option if you ever change your mind, and I'll remove myself from your life if that's what you need. Would you do that? I would do anything for your happiness, Sophia, even give up my own. Sophia looked into his eyes and saw a sincerity that completely disarmed her. This powerful man, accustomed to controlling everything, was giving her total control. Not just of the building, but of their future together. Do you know what's most ironic about all this? She murmured. What? That I spent 3 years trying to save this building to give my sons to, and now it turns out that what I really needed was to find someone who wanted to build a home with me. Does that mean Alexander didn't dare to hope? It means I believe in us. It means I want to try. But with one condition. What? That you promise me that if you ever get scared again, if you ever feel like you want to run, you'll tell me. That you won't make decisions about our future without talking to me. I promise. This time, when they approached each other, there were no doubts or distance. The kiss was different from the first, deeper, more secure, full of promises and possibilities. When they separated, Sophia smiled for the first time in days. You know what? I think Matteo is going to want to know about your proposal for the new playground you have in. How do you know there's a playground in the blueprints? Because I know you. And because I know that any man who takes the time to learn all the names of Mrs. Carmen's plants would definitely have thought of a place for children to play. Alexander laughed, and the sound filled the lobby like music. I love you, Sophia Herrera. And I love you, Alexanderman. But next time you want to surprise me with legal documents, give me a heads up. I almost had a heart attack. 6 months later, the Santander building had become the most successful community housing project in the city. But more importantly, it had become the home of a family that had found love in the most unexpected place. Sophia had finished her accounting studies and now directed the new community development division of the company they had founded together. Alexander had discovered that building homes was much more satisfying than destroying them. One November afternoon, while reviewing blueprints for their next project, Matteo burst into the office they had installed on the first floor of the building. Alexander, Mrs. Carmen says you have to come see her new flowers. And she also says that if you're going to propose to mommy, you better do it soon because she's not getting any younger to be a wedding godmother. Sophia blushed to her ears. Matteo, you don't say that. Why not? You already live with us anyway. You already help me with homework. And you already sleep in mommy's room. Alexander laughed and crouched down to be at the child's level. What do you think, Matteo? Do you think I should propose to your mom? Yes. But only if you promise we'll always live in this building. It's our home. Alexander looked at Sophia, who had tears in her eyes. What do you think, love? Do you want to marry me? Do you want to make this official? Sophia looked at him, then at Matteo, then at the building visible through the window, full of life and laughter and families who had found their place in the world. You know what? I think we're already a family. The paper would just be a formality. Is that a yes? That's a resounding yes. Alexander lifted her in his arms and spun her around, while Matteo clapped and shouted that he was going to tell Miss Carmen to prepare the celebration. That night, after celebrating with the entire building community, after Matteo fell asleep between both of them in the big bed, Sophia and Alexander went out to the balcony that overlooked the inner courtyard. From there they could see all the lit windows, hear the voices of their neighbors, feel the pulse of the small community they had helped create. Did you ever think you'd end up here? Sophia asked. Alexander hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her head. Never. But now I can't imagine being anywhere else. Don't you regret changing your life, leaving the big business for this? Sophia felt him smile against her hair. Love, this isn't smaller than what I did before. It's much bigger. Before I built buildings. Now we build homes. Before I had employees. Now I have a family. Before I had success. Now I have happiness. And what's the difference? That success is measured in numbers that always want more. Happiness is measured in moments like this, that are perfect exactly. On the horizon, the city lights twinkled like stars. But there, on their small balcony, surrounded by plants that Mrs. Carmen had given them, with the sound of their son breathing peacefully in the next room, they had found something more valuable than all the glass and steel skyscrapers they had found home. And so, after everything they had lived through, they understood that true love doesn't always come when we're looking for it, but it always comes when we're ready to receive it. Sometimes it comes disguised as loss, sometimes as encounter, but always it comes to heal what we thought was broken forever. If this story touched something inside you, tell me in the comments. What country are you listening from? What part of this story moved you most? Give it a like if you believe we all deserve a second chance at love. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that there's always hope. And subscribe for more stories that touch your soul. If you made it to the end, leave the word rebirth in the comments and tell me what you liked most about this story or if you feel identified with it in some way.